That night, while chandeliers sparkled and glasses clinked, Gregory Caldwell shook hands with millionaires. Two souls waited behind the rose garden, the girl and the dog, the quiet and the growl. And in the silence between them, something began. The screams never came from the front of the Caldwell estate. That part of the property shimmered with elegance, marble steps, imported lanterns, and manicured roses blooming like the cover of a lifestyle magazine. But behind those curated hedges, far beyond where the guests sipped champagne and complimented the hydrangeas, something was always just a little off. The silence back there wasn't peaceful. It was too quiet, heavy, waiting, like the breath you hold when you know something is terribly wrong. Hidden behind a half-rotted fence, camouflaged by vines and shadow, sat a rusted cage no larger than a garden shed. Inside, a 5-year-old girl crouched on a balding blanket, fingers wrapped around a fraying blue ribbon she twirled like it was oxygen. Her name was Anna Caldwell. No one outside that cage had heard her speak in years, not with words anyway. But her eyes followed everything, sharp, wide, as if recording each detail into memory. Especially the cage next to hers. That's where the German Shepherd lived. Rix had once been a canine hero, a certified police dog who could sniff out narcotics and chase down suspects with precision. But after the warehouse fire, after he dragged 2 kids from the wreckage and came out limping, something inside him changed. He became unpredictable. At least that's what Gregory Caldwell claimed when he had Rix kenneled beside his daughter. It's containment, Gregory had said when the questions started, not punishment. The dog keeps her grounded. He was too twitchy around guests anyway. He said it like a man explaining lawn maintenance. Logical, reasonable, expected. Gregory Caldwell didn't deal in emotion. He dealt in outcomes. Ever since his wife died, giving birth to Anna, he'd buried grief under strategy meetings and 6-figure transactions. His daughter's autism, her tendency to stim with light and texture and sound, didn't fit the brand. So he buried her too, just far enough behind the rose garden that no visitor ever noticed. Rix noticed. From the first moment they were placed side by side, the dog never barked without reason. He growled low when Anna shook, lay down when she rocked, paced when she panicked. They communicated in silences and vibrations, 2 prisoners in separate cells, breathing the same air. Each morning Mrs. Nora Green came with a tray of food. She was the only one who did. 62 years old, half retired and half exhausted, she had been with the Caldwell family since Gregory was a teenager. She had seen the mansion built and watched it become a fortress of wealth and denial. But even she had her limits. This morning, as she crossed the brick path behind the hedge, tray in hand, the air felt unusually still, like something was waiting to go wrong. Toast, apple slices, warm milk, she whispered, kneeling beside the bars. Anna didn't move, only the ribbon kept dancing between her fingers, flickering like a fragile signal flare. Rix shifted beside them. His ears perked. His chest rumbled faintly. Today was the day of the investor gala. Gregory was hosting a fleet of Atlanta's most influential moneymen. Everything had to be flawless, soundproofed, polished, buried, which meant Anna's ribbon had to go. She's not to be seen, not to be heard, and definitely not to be distracted, Gregory had snapped earlier that morning. So when Mrs. Green returned that afternoon, she carried more than a tray. In her other hand were scissors. "Sweetheart," she said softly, kneeling again. He said no ribbon, just for tonight. We'll hide it and give it back. Anna gripped the ribbon like a lifeline. "Please, baby, don't make this worse for yourself." The moment the blade grazed the fabric, Rix stood. It started as a growl, deep and unnatural. Then his entire body tensed, muscles coiled like springs. Mrs. Green froze mid-motion. Anna's body stiffened. Her eyes went wide with terror. Her breath quickened. The ribbon slipped from her hands. Rix lunged. The cage shook. Metal screamed. His paws slammed into the fencing with enough force to rattle the entire structure. Then came the bark, sharp, volcanic, the kind that cracked windows and sent birds flying. It wasn't just noise. It was war. Caterers dropped trays inside. Someone shouted. A bottle shattered on the marble. Gregory stormed around the hedges, eyes blazing. "What the hell?" Mrs. Green tried to explain, arms shielding Anna. She panicked. The ribbon. She needs it. The dog. He was protecting her. Gregory didn't blink. "Move the girl. Muzzle the dog. Now!" Staff scrambled like ants under boiling water. Chains were fetched. Tranquilizers whispered about. Through it all, Rix didn't back down. His body remained pressed to the bars, eyes fixed on Anna. She wasn't rocking now. She was watching him. And, slowly, her hands dropped from her ears. No one else noticed. Not the maids, not the guests laughing in the east wing. But Rix had noticed, and Anna had understood. The rain came hard that night, slanting sideways against the Caldwell estate like a punishment. Wind rattled the shutters. Puddles gathered at the base of the rose garden, flooding paths that had once been pristine. Most of the house had gone still, staff off duty, lights dimmed in anticipation of a stormy night. But at the back of the property, where the roses thinned and the hedges lost their symmetry, something stirred. Mark Dawson, the new groundskeeper, ducked under the low awning of the maintenance shed. He'd just finished checking the drainage trenches behind the stable when he heard it. Not the bark of a dog, that would have been expected, not the groan of wind through the trees. This was smaller, sharper, a sound like something breaking and trying to hold itself together all at once. A stifled sob. He paused, eyes narrowing. Then he heard it again, followed by a soft, guttural growl, the kind of sound a trained dog makes when alert, but not aggressive. Mark recognized it instantly. A signal. He followed the sound through the garden paths, boots sinking into wet grass. As he rounded the overgrown hedge, his flashlight swept across two cages, partially hidden by vines and a leaning wooden trellis. The beam caught movement, fur. Then a small form huddled in the corner of the far enclosure. A child. His breath caught. A little girl, no older than 5. Knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around her legs. Rain dripped steadily onto her tangled hair, matting it down. Beside her, in the neighboring cage, the German shepherd, Rix, he'd been told, stood rigid, eyes locked on Mark, tail unmoving. What the... The flashlight wavered slightly in his grip. He stepped closer, careful not to startle either one. The girl didn't speak. She didn't even blink, but her shoulders trembled in a rhythm too familiar. Autistic, he thought, just like Lucas. Mark crouched low, keeping his hands visible. "Hey there, little one. My name's Mark. You okay?" No response, only the subtle turn of her head and the faintest movement of her fingers, as though she were drawing invisible shapes in the air. Behind him, the porch door creaked. Mrs. Nora Green stood under an umbrella, her face pale beneath the lantern light. "You shouldn't be out here." Mark didn't move. "She's in a cage. There's a child in a cage. I know." Her voice cracked, but she kept it quiet. "Please, not here. Not now." He rose slowly. How long? Years. That single word held a lifetime of guilt. Inside the maintenance shed, Nora lit an old oil lamp and poured 2 cups of coffee. She told him everything. About Gregory, about the rules, about the ribbon, the cage, the dinners where Anna was locked away because her silence, her rocking, her differentness embarrassed him. Mark didn't speak for a long while. Then he stood. "I need to do something. Anything." The next morning, under the guise of cleaning the far side of the garden, he slipped a small object through the wire of Anna's cage. A sensory toy. A smooth plastic cylinder that lit up gently when touched, made to respond to motion. Anna didn't touch it at first. She stared at it, eyes wide, watching the colors shift as it rolled under the breeze. Then, cautiously, she tapped it with one finger. The light glowed red, then green. She tapped again. Across the fence, Rix watched with something close to reverence. When Anna paused, he let out a low whine and pressed a single paw against the cage between them. Mark saw it all from the shadows of the hedge. He began returning each morning with a different object, soft textured fabrics, a rubber puzzle piece, a feather. Each time, Anna's reaction grew more certain, more curious. That Friday, the estate's fragile balance ruptured. Claire Monroe arrived unannounced, suitcase in hand, her heels crunching on the gravel drive. Her long coat snapped in the wind like a battle flag. Gregory's face turned to stone when he saw her. "I told you never to come back. You lost that right the day Marina died." Claire replied evenly, "I'm staying in town for a week. You can either let me inside or I'll come back with a lawyer and the sheriff." Gregory relented, but not without a counterstrike. Within an hour he'd ordered the garden staff to build a makeshift wooden wall around the cages, complete with a handwritten sign, "Wildlife Recovery Area. No entry." Mark watched in disbelief as the panels went up. "You're covering it up," he muttered. Mrs. Green stood beside him, lips pressed thin. That's all he ever does. That night Claire wandered the garden on her own. The storm had passed, leaving behind a soggy calm. She walked past the hedges, drawn by a faint light. Mark had left the sensory toy inside Anna's cage again. Claire approached quietly. She heard a soft hum, barely more than a breath. Then she saw them. Rix sitting tall, ears forward, eyes fixed on the girl, and Anna kneeling beside the toy, tracing patterns on the dirt with her fingers. They weren't just coexisting, they were communicating. Claire stepped closer and froze. A rope, thin, knotted at the ends, buried beneath a layer of straw just inside Anna's cage. She reached down carefully and pulled it free. It wasn't just rope. It was tied in a loop, frayed and worn, like it had been twisted over and over for days, maybe weeks. A protest, a secret gesture, a message no one had heard, until now. Claire looked up, eyes locked with Rix. "I see you," she whispered. The dog didn't move, but his gaze stayed fixed on hers. Anna looked up next, and for a moment the corners of her mouth twitched. A ghost of a smile, a connection forged in silence, now finally seen. Claire turned back toward the house, gripping the rope in one hand. This was no longer just a family matter. It was a reckoning. Wide-eyed, Anna didn't move. She didn't cower or rock or scream. Instead, she extended one hand, palm upward, fingers trembling. Rix lowered his head and touched his nose to her palm. And Anna smiled. Not a big smile, just a small curl of the lips, brief as a firefly's glow. But it was a beginning. Behind the hedges, beneath the weight of years of silence, structure, and shame, something had shifted. A gate had opened. Not just one made of iron, but one of understanding, and neither of them was going back. EXT, Caldwell Estate. Moments later, the first roll of thunder cracked across the sky like a cannon, shaking the estate's towering stone walls. Moments later, sheets of rain began to hammer the manicured grounds, turning the rose garden into a swamp of drowned petals and streaming mud. The power blinked once, then failed entirely. The estate was plunged into dense, wet darkness. Somewhere deep within the system, backup generators sputtered but failed to ignite. For the first time in years, the security grid dropped. No red lights blinked, no sensors stirred. The property, always so tightly controlled, exhaled into silence. NT. Kennel. Behind the second hedgerow. Continuous. Anna sat curled in the corner of her cage, her tiny form rigid as the storm screamed around her. She didn't cry, she didn't rock. She simply stared at the blackness, hands clutching a scrap of cloth like a lifeline. Then, as if in response to some unseen cue, the door to the adjacent kennel creaked. A paw nudged the latch. A claw scratched at the metal loop holding the bolt. Rix, soaked and trembling, worked methodically in the dark. One paw, a nudge, another scratch. And then, with a groan of rusted iron, the latch gave way. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply pushed the gate open with his shoulder and turned toward Anna's cage. That latch was easier. Old, worn, and poorly secured after years of weather, his paw found the loop. A second push. The door swung outward with a shriek that was swallowed by the wind. Anna didn't move at first. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Her eyes were wide. Then Rix nudged her gently, his nose brushing her cheek. She blinked, slowly, cautiously. She crawled forward, one hand on the damp ground, the other clutching her ribbon. They stepped out together. Mud sucked at her bare feet. Rain stung her skin like tiny needles. The wind howled through the hedges, ripping branches loose and sending garden tools skittering across the brick path. Rix stayed ahead, glancing back every few steps, ears alert. Anna followed silently, sometimes crawling, sometimes upright, until a patch of moss-covered stone betrayed her. Her foot slipped, her body twisted in the air and came down hard. She didn't scream, but her breath whooshed out in a gasp. Within seconds, Rix was at her side. He didn't nudge her this time. Instead, he lay across her like a blanket, shielding her from the wind and rain, his body trembling with each gust. Int. Caldwell Estate. Study. Same night, Claire stood at the back window watching the storm claw at the rose bushes. Her eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong. It wasn't just the silence from the kennels, it was deeper, a maternal instinct sharpened by years of reading micro-expressions and breathing the silent language of neurodivergent children. Without a word, she grabbed her coat and bolted from the kitchen. Mark, already soaked from securing the tool shed, met her halfway. "They're gone," Claire said without preamble. "What?" "Anna, Rix. The cages are open. I don't know how, but they're not there." Mark's face drained of color. He turned on his heel and ran, shouting for the groundskeepers, for anyone with a flashlight. Claire didn't wait. She headed for the woods, heart hammering, rain blinding her eyes. Int. Caldwell Manor. Continuous. Gregory Caldwell exploded the moment he was told Anna had vanished. His fury erupted like a dam breaking. Furniture overturned. Threats flew like knives. He accused Claire of sabotage, of kidnapping. He vowed to sue everyone, to bury them under litigation and ruin. But even he couldn't deny the sick fear tightening his gut. For the first time, his daughter was truly out of reach, and out of his control. EXT. Woods. Hours later, Rix led Anna toward a forgotten hunting shed, half collapsed and consumed by ivy. Lightning split the sky overhead, illuminating the warped doorway and broken shingles. Inside, it was dark, but dry enough. Rix nudged Anna inside first, then squeezed through behind her. His breaths were ragged. His fur clung in soaked mats to his side. Anna reached for him with trembling fingers, brushing the strands away from his eyes. They sat together in the corner, her head resting against his chest, the rhythm of his heartbeat steadying her own. But the woods held more dangers than just rain and cold. EXT. Nearby underbrush. Same night movement stirred. Yellow eyes blinked in the darkness. A bobcat, gaunt and mean from hunger, crept forward. The scent of blood, of weakness, drew it closer. Rix's head snapped up. A growl rose in his throat, deep and guttural. The bobcat lunged. It all happened in seconds. Rix launched himself forward, intercepting the blur of claws and fangs before it reached Anna. The sounds that followed were chaos, snarls, yelps, the thud of bodies crashing against the shed wall. Anna screamed, not in panic, but in something more primal, more connected. She crawled into a corner, hands pressed to her ears, as Rix threw his entire body between her and the threat. When the fight ended, the bobcat limped away into the storm, bleeding and defeated. But Rix didn't move. He collapsed near Anna, his side torn, his breathing shallow. The light in his eyes flickered. EXT. Shed. Pre-dawn. The search party arrived just before dawn. Claire burst into the shed first, her flashlight beam sweeping across the floor. She found Anna curled beside Rix, her small hands tangled in his fur, her cheek pressed to his neck. There were no tears, no screams, just a silence so complete it seemed to smother the air. Anna looked up as they entered. She didn't flinch, didn't recoil. She simply tightened her arms around Rix's neck, refusing to let go. The blood on her dress had long dried into dark patches. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but calm. Claire knelt slowly. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. He's safe too. We'll take care of him." Anna didn't speak. But when the paramedics lifted Rix onto a stretcher, she followed them. Every step she took left a print of mud and quiet defiance. She was not afraid. She was not broken. She was awake. And she was not going back. Int. Blue Ridge Veterinary Hospital. Dawn emergency lights sliced through the fog as van doors flew open. Rainwater and blood mixed on the concrete as Mark and the paramedics unloaded Rix, his fur matted, his breathing shallow, his eyes fluttering between this world and another. The vet team, already prepped by Claire's desperate call, moved quickly. Oxygen mask, fluids, pressure gauze, EKG. It all blurred into a mechanical chorus of life-saving noise. Mark stood in the hallway, soaked to the bone, hands trembling, unable to scrub Rix's blood from beneath his fingernails. Claire held Anna in her lap. The little girl remained silent, still clutching the old leather collar with both hands like it was a lifeline. No one could reach her, not with soft voices, not with warm blankets, not even with her favorite sliced apples. Anna had entered a state so withdrawn, even Claire, an experienced behavioral therapist, felt helpless. Only when the vet brought out the collar cut from Rix's neck during surgery did Anna react. Her fingers reached for it. She didn't cry, didn't blink. She just gripped it tightly, curled into herself, and stayed that way. NT Hospital. Next 10 days. Claire did what she could. She filed reports, turned over every recording she had, night vision footage of Anna and Rix sleeping side by side, audio of Gregory's threats. The moment the dog lunged to protect the child from an approaching figure, Mark gave his full statement, voice shaking, but firm. Mrs. Green backed them up with quiet defiance, finally breaking her silence. The pieces all fit: the cage, the bruises, the fear, the silence, the dog. The arrest came quickly, but not quietly. Gregory Caldwell was taken from his estate in handcuffs, his face pale, his jaw locked in denial. The media descended like vultures, scenting scandal in the home of a prominent financial figure. Headlines blared across Charleston. Mansion of secrets. Wealthy banker accused of child abuse. But none of that mattered to Anna. Not the sirens, not the press, not the public's sudden appetite for justice. Her world began and ended with a single hospital room. And whether the dog inside it would ever open his eyes again, 10 days passed. 10 days of silence, untouched food, sleepless nights, and soft murmurs. Claire stayed with her, day and night. Mark visited in the afternoons, bringing small wooden toys he carved himself, leaving them on the bedside table like offerings. The doctors gave updates in guarded tones. Stable, then unstable, then holding, then not. Every beep of the monitor seemed to echo louder than it should. NT, recovery room, day 11. On the morning of the 11th day, something shifted. Dr. Singh, weary but kind, called Claire before dawn. He's breathing on his own, still groggy, but responsive. Claire didn't wake Anna. She waited, but something passed between them in the quiet of the room, because Anna stood, and pointed toward the door. They walked the hallway together, hand in hand. In the recovery suite, Rix lay on a padded mat, wrapped in gauze, bandaged. Machines blinked quietly behind him. His ears perked slightly at the sound of the door. He didn't lift his head. He didn't need to. Anna crossed the room in slow, deliberate steps. She crouched beside him, placed one small hand on his snout, and whispered the word that broke the silence wide open. Buddy. His eyes fluttered open. His tail thumped weakly, and Anna, for the first time in weeks, smiled. EXT. Asheville farmhouse, 3 months later, morning. A small group gathered beneath a wooden sign carved with simple, bold letters, "The Haven for Healing and Connection." Children played in the yard, some nonverbal, some with visible disabilities, others just shy and curious. Among them, Anna Caldwell spun in slow circles, arms outstretched, eyes squinting in the sunlight. Rix stood nearby, no longer bandaged, though still marked by scars. He didn't run, didn't bark. He simply watched her, tail wagging gently. Claire stood at the gate with Mark and Mrs. Green. All three watched the scene unfold. The journey had been long, harrowing, marked with moments that would haunt them forever. But this was healing, not perfect, not complete, but real. Rix trotted toward Anna and nudged her gently when she spun too close to a tree. She turned, smiled, and rested her forehead against his. No words were spoken. None were needed. Above the arch of the garden gate, in black iron letters, was a quote Claire had chosen herself. "Healing begins when someone believes you're worth saving." And behind her, in a soft green field speckled with laughter and music, a girl once caged and a dog once forgotten built a new world, with nothing more than trust, scars, and love. If this tale moved you, if you felt the tension, the heartbreak, and the triumph, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring more thrilling, emotional, and inspiring stories your way. Leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Do you believe dogs have an extraordinary sixth sense? Share your thoughts and personal stories with us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.